Our final speaker in regards to our railway sector and our railway section is going to be Robin Lord. Robin is a proponent with the NeeStaNan utility corridor. He is passionate about assisting Indigenous people develop a utility corridor and a transportation system which will create many opportunities as well as assist Canada's economy. Robin, you want to come forward?
Can you hear me without a mic? No? Okay, I'll use the mic. Thanks for inviting us. I'd like to introduce Dr. Hathaway. He's from Fox Lake and one of the key parts of moving the corridor ideas forward. And special thanks to the previous speakers, all of which have done a great job of setting up the need for big thinking and the theme of Hudson's Bay being a very key part of the world and for the world transportation and very necessary for the prairies. One of the, I'm not Indigenous, Fox Lake and its members are a big part of NeeStaNan. And one of the big themes is developing economic reconciliation and improving the world. Tom Jackson, who's a member of our group, does a great job on that. I won't continue. So, why would we look at corridors and expanded ports on the Hudson's Bay? Manitoba's resources are needed by the world. It was observed earlier the type of mineral resources that should be developed in northern Manitoba, the prairies in general, adding to Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. There's lots of products that the world needs. We can't get them there. We can't get them there efficiently and effectively. The Americans do a good job on it for us and make some money in the process. The benefits will be good for all Canadians. I was invited to a little think tank session in Toronto that actually Scott Moe was at a couple of months ago because we're looking at corridors and improved transportation in Canada. So it's not just the prairie attention. The rest of the country appreciates that there are great advantages and great needs for this. And we can get into the math later, but there's 100 billion onto a trillion of economic development that would come out of proper transportation out of the Hudson's Bay. Those are big numbers. So, Winnipeg and Manitoba in general are very well located. You saw this map earlier, transportation through North America. The green is, those are things we put on there. There's some Indigenous groups across the prairies into BC who would like to extend communication and transportation, and that includes electricity, by the way. As hydropower is more hydropower to develop here in Manitoba. There's, if you look at that Minneapolis, St. Paul area down here, there's 100 million people there that could be effectively served out of the Hudson's Bay. I'll just back up for 1 second. On the mineral development front, the Ring of Fire in northern Ontario is arguably the largest known minerals that haven't been developed. What does it take to develop that? Well, how about a little electricity and some transportation in the port? So you've seen versions of this. I'll just pop down here. These are different routes, and I'd encourage you guys to look at our what we call the crops. on major trade routes on a beach ball. So we're used to looking at flat maps like this, and you don't appreciate how close the Hudson's Bay is to Europe, or how effective container traffic can come out of Europe through Winnipeg into that Minneapolis, Omaha area. Some stats, we don't export natural gas to anyone in the world other than the United States. So the United States liquefies and sells more natural gas to the U.S. than we sell to them. So I think it's fair to say they're repackaging our natural gas and selling it to Europe. There are months that the U.S. liquefiers on the Gulf Coast of the U.S. have made more than $20 billion repackaging Canadian natural gas. And this month, it would only be $2.5 billion. So those are the type of costs that we're experiencing in Canada as a nation because we haven't got proper transportation. Before I took this on, I spent a little time in New York and London, and one of the comments was, we're all over finance and stuff like this. We just don't believe Canada can get its act together to do it. And one of the New York bankers patted me on the shoulder and said, Robin, why are you Canadians letting us do this to you? So it's not lost on the rest of the world. It may be lost on Canada, but not lost on the world. Brazil, the largest importer of potash in the world, 5,000 kilometers closer. This little effort here, and sorry for the busy slide, is the relative costs of ship traffic, train traffic, and truck traffic. And big ships are way cheaper than little ships. But even little ships are way cheaper than trains and trucks. So the message there is get the thing on a ship. Get your products on a ship and get it to market, and you'll do it cheaper. Okay, thanks. So what could we move? Shipping containers. We've got Centerport in Winnipeg. Winnipeg's the geographical center in North America. Our number's actually 130 million people that we could effectively service with a good port. Lumber, we're experiencing tariffs with the U.S. We aren't experiencing tariffs with Europe. We just can't get lumber to Europe efficiently. Lumber to Europe, rather. Pulses, hydropower, wheat, asphalt binder, metals, potash. Let me talk specifically about potash. We've had some high-level conversations with Brazilians, who are the biggest importer of potash in the world. Western Canada has half of the world's potash reserves. And Canada is perceived as a reliable trade partner. The Brazilians' other options are Belarus and Russia. They would buy 8 million tons a year from us. Do the math. That's 25,000 tons a day. So that's two large train sets. It's easy to imagine 1,000 rail cars a day going to the Hudson's Bay, to and from the Hudson's Bay. Next, please. So, a couple of business cases here. Potash, we think with an efficient rail line and a big functioning port that can get big ships into it, we could save $40 to $50 a ton. Now, 8 million tons a year with a commitment like that to Brazil, that's $300 million a year. The average for the last 5 years of liquefied natural gas, if we were able to export 5 billion cubic feet a day, which is the largest LNG facility, would be $50 billion a year net. Next, please. 5 plants. Last year, China built 100 plants. Germany's fired up all their coal-fired stuff because they can't get natural gas to run their businesses and heat their homes. Reduce global emissions by 60 to 90 million tons. That's like taking 12 to 18 million cars off the road. That single-handedly, with the combination of the world effect, would reduce Canada's emissions by 10%. Having natural gas up in northern Manitoba would also reduce heating costs for northern Manitobans. Add tens of billions to the economy, and would make a new hydro dam or 2 feasible. And Manitoba Hydro's done the work on the hydro dams, they just can't write the check to build them. Hudson's Bay would have the most efficient liquefied natural gas in the world. Right now on the Gulf Coast of the US, they burn natural gas and oil to run the refrigerators. And they're starting at, I'll exaggerate slightly, they're starting at plus 30 Celsius instead of minus 30 Celsius. And we're running a fridge plant here. So it will be the most efficient liquefied natural gas in the world. And it will be set up to make hydrogen work when we take the bugs work out of how to do green hydrogen. So, I'm going to deal with this directly, and Christian and I can present on this later. We've been accused of being against Churchill. We're not against Churchill. We're just saying, as one think tank said about 4 years ago to the headline that they had was, Heather Think Big, referring to Heather Stevenson. The Port of Vancouver is actually 28 ports working together. And I think the comment earlier, and Chris, I believe you made it, on problems with the Port of Vancouver and the ports of Montreal with strikes and rail problems and washouts, things like that. We need optionality in moving things. And one of the options is Dr. Prentice's dirigibles. That's just a part for the area. So, we're all over. Let's figure out how to do big things, and let's add hundreds of billions to the economy. And I think Dr. Prentice, you made the comment, these things are expensive. Well, expensive is a relative concept. When you subsidize the LNG producers on the U.S. Gulf Coast for $50 billion a year, how expensive is this? Because we would pay out the fantasy budget for the big corridor project and expanded port is $60 or $80 billion. That was 1 year's net revenue on the Gulf Coast for LNG, 2021. Not all ports are made the same. We've got a shot of the port of Churchill here, a couple of them actually. The one bottom left is the Prince Rupert Container Port, which, by the way, is the 3rd largest container port in Canada. And it's handy to nowhere, but you can actually get boats in and out of it. Whereas Montreal and Vancouver, you've got waiting time and obstacles and periodic strikes. And the top middle is a floating LNG plant. The top right is a iron ore port in Australia. This thing that's hiding here, that's the original port of Churchill, which is the original vision 100 plus years ago for a port on Hudson's Bay. It's not a great location. It's got silting problems and shallow water and a whole bunch of other things. We think that there's a version of that further out that could be done environmentally safely and be functional for big ships. Big ships these days are 400 meters long, so think 4 football fields. Anyway, next please. Does anybody care? We actually did a little survey. And as it turns out, more than half of the population thinks that something like this is a good idea. And it doesn't really matter whether they're NDP, conservative, women or men, or their level of education. The statistics are relatively simple. Next slide. So, what to remember? There's $100 billion to be had here. Why think it big? First Nations have political, social, and constitutional license to do this. And I'll refer back to the banker in London that said, we're all over helping finance this. We just don't do Canada to get its act together. A segue on that, Trans-Canada Pipelines with their Energy East project spent $1 billion not moving it forward. And that message hasn't been lost by executives in big companies. If you want to have a career limiting move, think about a big infrastructure project. So, we believe that these things should be economic and competitive. They shouldn't need government money, because if you need government money, then you can't have long-term sustainability. You become a political football in it. And what we're looking for is a solid economic venture here. Now, the governments of Western Canada with the MOU, and they invited NeeStaNan people to the signing of that MOU, and they were supportive in helping it launch, because there's a lot of background work to do on this. We have a lot of environmental work and engineering and whatnot to do. Arctic sovereignty, that was mentioned earlier. Read a newspaper. Large ships are the cheapest, we touched on that. Rules of thumb, trains are 5 to 10 times more expensive than ships per ton kilometer, and trucks are up to 50 times more expensive than ships. So, what's going on in the future? Climate change is real, and I smile as I'm thinking about this discussion that I had with one of my daughters who said, Dad, do you think climate change is real? I said, you know, Marco, there used to be a mile of ice here. I think this is really happening. +1,000 rail cars a day. And if you do the math on some products, like if we're servicing 100 million people and shipping 8 million tons a year of potash, plus ramping up the grain, because to Dr. Prentice, when you start getting the big numbers, you start lowering the cost. And everything becomes more efficient. So we might have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 cars a day going. Again, Prince Rupert, handy to nowhere, there are about 1,000 rail cars a day. Government is slow, and subsidies are on economic projects at some point end. And Mr. Naylor, I'm not picking on governments here. That's just the political reality of the process. I have, one of my grandfathers had what he calls his laws, and one of his laws was bet against the government. Because when the government decides it's a good idea, they've decided that because of the political pressure, and then by the time they get implementing that, the situation's changed. That's just the political reality. European interests are questioning if we're reliable. Now, the Germans were over visiting with Western Canadian governments, and Mr. Naylor, I don't know whether you were involved in those conversations, certainly were in Alberta. They're all over stuff like this. They just need an audience. Finding corridors is better than reacting to them. And foreign governments government and industry pressure are going to force on these things. Right now, the Americans are big beneficiaries of our inaction, and the world's not a better place because we can't supply natural gas to Germany, and Russia can hold Germany ransom. Anyway, I look forward to questions and later.